Good morning. Welcome to Sokukoji. This morning's Dharma talk is titled, thanks to Susan Hirschfield, who asked me this question this morning. So I thought, why do I need to think of it? You just answer a question or respond to it. I don't know if I can answer it, but I can respond to it. I have a deep feelings about and thoughts about the nature of this question, which is, what does it mean to save all beings? What does it mean to save all beings? Basic vow of the bodhisattva, be with all things is another way of saying it. Save all beings, put others before yourself. May all beings be happy and at their ease, or pray for others. We might pray for ourselves too, so we can be around for a while to continue to pray for others. So there's different levels of understanding of that. And there's different ways that shows up as a spiritual path, not as a mundane path of being the greatest doctor in the world, or nurse, or psychologist, or psychiatrist, or therapist, or priest, for that matter, or Zen monk, for that matter. So first, the sitting practice of meditation takes us into, if you're practicing Zazen, Shikantaza, or some kind of extremely radical, simple stillness meditation where you are on receive, then what you begin to see is everything you've been covering up, and it is not easy. So you may need the help of someone who's dedicated to you. You may need the help of someone who may not fill the bill of a bodhisattva according to Newsweek, but maybe someone who can see what you're up to and give you a response that fundamentally addresses your neurosis, your whatever fancy word, your self-deception, your bullshit, to use the fancy word for that, but addresses it in a way that it doesn't take your intelligence away from you and makes you a follower or a cult member, which sometimes happens in every so-called spiritual path, and even the true spiritual path, that can happen. Not easy. So the first thing you can do to practice, to learn how to do this, is to listen to your own mind, feelings, emotions without doing anything with it. When anything arises in the mind stream, the sitting practice of meditation, Shikantaza, is to train yourself to just watch what moves, watch what shows up, what goes away, what turns sideways, what turns from red to purple. Any kind of simple, radical root movement that's happening there. So you see what's happening. So you can see the first instance. Trungpa Rinpoche would call it first thought, best thought, which is a little bit over the top. I don't usually use that unless I'm at a loss for words, at a loss for thoughts. Then I might. It's hard to do that because we don't want to do that. We don't want to even put our own sanity on the front row, where we can actually begin to see how crazy we are. How insanely we grasp after this and reject that. Don't do anything. If there's a separate being, if that's true, there is that paranoia is actually true. There is someone that's in danger, and someone that needs to be looked, someone that needs to be put ahead of everybody else, because, oh my gosh, what if someone gets ahead of us? So that particular vow, the vow to be with all things, the vow to save all beings, is an intention. It's not the relative approach to helping someone, getting their feedback necessarily. There might be feedback there. You've helped me so much. There might be gratitude. There might be all kinds of things happening there. It is about the intention to do that, not the accomplishment. Milarepa, to shorten the story there, met Marpa the translator, became his student, and went into retreat for the rest of his life. And he was a bodhisattva, without a doubt. He didn't necessarily go into the marketplace and begin to hand out candy to children, which could also be done. There's no difference between those. There's a differentiation, and you can pick and choose. You can shuffle it this way, shuffle it that way, deal it this way, deal it that way. But it's the same situation, the equality of sameness and difference. Has to be understood in the awareness, not in the thought process. You really don't need to think. It's quite amazing. You really don't need to. When the thoughts just arise out of dependent origination, then there's no one thinking. Your thinking will work, but there's no thinker, as I think it was Stephen Batchelor first wrote a book on thoughts without a thinker or something like that. That doesn't mean the thinker is gone. That's a misunderstanding to look for, am I thinking less? No, you might be thinking more. If you look for any kind of results, this is a mundane path. Not wrong, go do it. Become a psychiatrist, become a band leader. Becoming. That's the existential approach to this, as some of you may know if you studied that material. Becoming. In this on this path, there is no real becoming, because there isn't anything to start with. It's radically empty of your ideas and thoughts about it. And that's not more thoughts about how empty it is. So this is going to show up differently for each person. Some people may be really threatened by this. I don't know if I can put others before myself. I mean, what about that guy over there? Am I going to put him or her or them before me when they're insane? That's why you need to do it. You need to respect people's confusion. That doesn't mean go to an extreme where you just block it out because you're so respectful. You're just all about how respectful you are of everyone's confusion. More identity stuff that shows up that fuels the self-centeredness and narcissism. I would venture to say, and this is not a fact, it looks to me from being around for a while and worked with not only the Sangha we have here, which is quite small, but larger Sanghas and also smaller ones, various sizes over the last close to half a century. Lots of ways of doing this that are different and not necessarily better or worse, but anytime it starts to go into some kind of accomplishment about who understands or who's got it or something like that, then we tend to settle for accomplishment mentality. Not wrong. You can even do that, and as long as you're aware of that, then that will eventually wear out on its own, because it will just not get the fuel of what? Ignorance. It won't get the fuel of grasping. It won't get the fuel of aggression, pushing against it. So putting others before yourself is when it starts out, it sounds like, that's might even be inspired by that, but there's no credential there. You may be really, you could say, in a relative sense, fulfilling that vow by just dumping everything into that empty forest called others. You might be dumping everything into that. All of your energy, all of your love, compassion, devotion, dedication goes towards others. How do you find them? you have to start out with a world dictator? No. No, you start out right here. Turn around, face the wall, and be kind to yourself. Might be a little difficult to do that when you feel you're not so good, not doing so well, really confused, really egotistical, you know, those little comments that come up. That's the very nature of ego, is to reify either with positivity or negativity or ignorance, passion, aggression, ignorance again, some kind of someone who's a self, who's going somewhere, who's not getting ahead, or who's doing not so good, or who's full of themselves, or maybe that's just ego. So how do we work with this? We do it with awareness. And how does awareness work? Awareness does not produce a damn thing. Awareness just receives. So receive the world, receive. This is why you have all these nerve endings. So you can receive this, touch this, feel this, see this, smell this, taste this, think this. Even thinking is also a receiver. You do not produce any thoughts. But that dynamic, that little closed, wrapped up ball of darkness with a little dot of light in the middle of it called me, that's being protected by your ego, your self-centeredness, needs fuel. And it gets it from agreeing, objecting. It gets it from any kind of polarity by buying into one end of it, rejecting the other end. Or possibly by seeing that we're all equal, or that having some kind of pronouncement about our understanding of non-duality, Advaita, going into that, reciting what it says in books, or making up our own things. Put others before yourself by beginning to start out saying how you can't do that. You can't really put others. You would rather judge or evaluate or condemn or criticize others. It's just practically knee-jerk. It's just as soon as anybody walks in the room, there's immediate judgments come up. What they're wearing, how they look, how they hold their body, the tone of their voice. And then if we have negative thoughts about that person, then we double up again, come back around to ourselves, to our ego, and kind of scold ourselves. We shouldn't think that. We should be nicer. We shouldn't be so full of ourselves. We should not be have those negative thoughts or be critical of others. We should be more compassionate. There's no way you can be compassionate. You can be sympathetic. But compassion is not a feeling. If you think it's a feeling, you're misunderstanding, because compassion is empty of a self. It's a way of talking about it that doesn't even, if you see that, if you understand that, you don't even need to comment on it unless you meet somebody who wants to understand that and gives you permission, and you begin to function out of dependent origination as a teacher. Not because maybe I can help people. You can't help anybody. You might better keep your trap shut. Receive, listen to people. Listen to what people that are confused are saying. Receive. And don't cover up what you've just received by thinking you know what they said. There's no way you can know what someone said. Relatively, yes, but fundamentally, what is behind that? You'll never know. It's like trying to find a tree in the northern peninsula of Michigan, and you've never even been there. So it's an intention, and it's different for each person. As a monk, you'll recite that vow over and over and over and over again, all of your life, until you are not separate from the vow. It's not an identity. It's just a vow. It's an intention. And it's not about accomplishing. There's no credential there. There's no graduation certificate. There's no test. So you might have to start out by saying, I vow to be with all things. May all beings be happy and at their ease. Or reciting the 16 precepts in our lineage, or whatever lineage you're studying in or under with. And you may need to do that through a teacher. If you have a teacher, good. If you don't have a teacher, then perhaps you should look for one. But don't settle for anything. Don't settle. Well, this teacher might be okay. Don't settle. And another thing I would say is don't teach unless you have to. Don't teach out of your relative. Want to give somebody a book, that's fine. But don't you particularly teach someone about Buddhism. Unless you have to. I mean, if you're have a gun to your head or something, then you might have to do that. And you know what I mean by gun? I don't mean a literal gun. I'm saying that you need that credential because you're really a smart person. You really have a good intellect, and you really understand what Vasubandhu is saying, or Dogen. If you know what Dogen's saying, then you should join our study group and help these poor people. Go ahead.
How do we have an intention that we don't understand?
It's the only way you can have it. It's the only way. You just have the intention. What is a bodhisattva vow? What is it? Tell me. Explain it. Time's up.
Like it was phrased in the title, save all beings or be with all things.
That's it. Save all beings. Put everyone before yourself. Keep going.
Is there a push or an effort in that?
Probably. It's going to be some. Mm-hmm.
When we're unclear about that, is that push in the wrong direction?
No, that's the only way you can do it. If you're clear about it, that's a mistake. This is not a relative path. It is a spiritual path, not a mundane path. I think I got it down. How about you guys? Want some help? No, you're going into a forest, and that forest is your alaya or your subconscious or whatever. Use whatever word you want. Refrigerator where the light's gone out. So you need to do that. So that's how it's done. You turn to that. You look at it and you say, "I don't understand that." That's how it's done. Just continue. I wouldn't take your ego and rev up into a wheel stand. But you could feel that energy of not knowing what that is. And so it brings you into that dark area of the consciousness that is full of doubt. And this is where most people are, except most people have it covered up. And you're a little bit different than other people if you're observing the vow of the bodhisattva, because you've decided to look at the darkness. Big difference, although not fundamentally different. And why isn't it fundamentally different? Because you're not separate from any of those people. You can even say you're doing it for them. So even if you're on a mountaintop, if you're looking at your mind, you're not separate from all beings. You won't know that. If you know it, then that's just some kind of relative credential. Might as well be a PhD, which may be valuable in relative situation, but it doesn't help at all on the spiritual path. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing. How does helping someone relatively with like feeding them or sheltering them, is that different than helping someone fundamentally?
Well, sure, it's different. You can't eat fundamentals, but you can eat Cocoa Puffs. I'm getting paid to say that. We live in the cereal city, so why not? Kellogg Foundation. So no, I'm saying there's a difference there, but it's the causes and conditions. If you begin to become very clear about what the causes and conditions, praticca samutpada, dependent origination, as it starts to show up in your personal mind, when the personhood starts to become transparent, and it takes a while. Can't do this in 3 or 4 years. Might take a lot longer. When the personhood begins to become transparent to the consciousness, and we see that area that we thought was somebody that was so concerned just becomes transparent. I sometimes refer to it as a clown on the roof, because it has some say so, but not much. Where was I going with that? What was your question? You don't remember? Oh, where's Susan at? She needs to ask me a question. We're all in the same boat. I'm in the same boat you're in.
Susan Bowing.
Go ahead, Susan.
So you said don't settle, but how do you know if you're settling or you're not settling, Bowing?
That's why you need a teacher. Thank you. That's why you need, when I say you need it, there might be other ways. Maybe shamans have ways of doing this. They're pretty complicated. They might have ways, but this particular path, the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, you need those 3 structures, because the way in which your mind can go this way and that way, sometimes the community will support you from going off the deep end of me, and my stuff. And sometimes some aspect of the teaching, like the 30 verses of Vasubandhu, or the works of Dogen Zenji, or something that Trungpa Rinpoche has said, or Dalai Lama, or Sharon Salzberg, possibly. A lot of Dharma teachers out there that have interesting things to say. Go ahead, Susan.
So Susan Bowing. So could you say more about the not settling? What are you not settling for, Bowing?
A result. If you're looking for results, I'm not saying that they're evil, or that there's some kind of transcendental blasphemy or something. I'm just saying that if you're looking for as soon as you, can you see me on your screen? I can't see you. I know you're out there somewhere. But
yes.
This is when you settle for anything. When you come to any conclusion, any opinion, don't settle. Don't come to. If you have opinions, show up. Just look at them. If you don't buy into them, if you don't fuel them with any energy and help yourself separate yourself from all the people who are wrong, buying into that relative dynamic that human beings have, which is thinking they're special, then when you buy into anything, you're settling. Don't accept it, don't reject it, don't look away. Don't believe Buddhism, don't disbelieve Buddhism, and don't ignore it. You can do that with everything. You can do it with your partner. Just receive. It's an amazing thing to just receive. This doesn't mean your partner won't be really upset with you about your, to them, apparent indifference or stoicism or whatever they might project onto you. Instead of seeing that you're just present, it's called authentic presence. It has nothing to do with gifts. It's just, you're just there. Just there. And it's not something you can do. It's not something you can maintain. It's always about awareness. Awareness has no fingers. It can't push buttons. It can't do anything. It can't do anything. But it's not separate from anything. And you are actually, if this is a spiritual path for you, you are actually transcending the very physicality that you're attached to, while still having a cup of coffee, still having a headache, or still scratching the back of your head. Still, physicality is still there. It just doesn't belong to anyone anymore. Identity is gone. Now, if it's there, if it shows up in force, which it sometimes will, and if there's any shred of belief, disbelief, or ignoring happening in that area of the consciousness, then we're right back on the tilt-a-whirl or the merry-go-round, where we're right and wrong, back up, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, success and failure, enlightened and crazy, and so on. So just observe. It's way beyond, just to use a relative expression, to help you see that this is distant. And at the same time you say that, it is absolutely right in your lap. It's completely intimate because you are not separate from anything. It's not a fact. There's no philosophy there particularly, other than some of the Buddhist texts talk about this, but the realization of it leaves the words and phrases without abandoning them. So you may find yourself, to go back to the question, you may find yourself seeing you're starting to believe a particular thing or disbelieve a particular thing. Just notice that. It's not about changing that so you'll never have an opinion, you never have no, you don't have to do anything with it. All you have to do is be aware that the opinions are looking for somebody to grasp, because you still have ears. Your ears will not drop off if you meditate. Well, maybe if you do Vipassana, they might. Sorry, no politics. Some people need to do, speaking of that, some people need to do that practice. Sometimes it's very important. Not everybody needs to do shikantaza. Shikantaza is absolutely a gold mine, so to speak, metaphorically, for someone who is looking for an awareness practice. And for other people, they can't do this. I've had students come here and practice this for a while, and just, I gotta go study with Shinzen the Young. I can't do this anymore. I will not give any names. But and is that correct or incorrect? It's totally perfect. It's dependently arisen. Needs to happen. That person got a taste of this, saw that this wasn't working for them, and went another direction. Any questions?
Bowing, is there something, what is the non-conceptual aspect of saving all beings, if we could talk about one?
We can. Yes, that might take a while, but you see that their beings are not separate. There are no separate beings. There aren't any beings. But you begin to see that here first, and it takes a while out here. This is pretty convincing confusion when it's in your face. But first see it here. And there'll be no congratulation. There'll be no maintenance. You won't know who you are, and you won't care. You won't know who you are as an individual. This doesn't mean you forget your name or forget how to drive, or it doesn't mean that you will show up disconnected from the relative world, like sometimes is done, because there's an understanding that it's about going beyond the materiality of the world. But it doesn't mean doing away with it, getting rid of it so you can be more spiritual, which quite often people do. Like the whole idea of celibacy, just insanely attached to men, macho control of things. Control, not only control of culture, but control of women. We all know this. You don't need to even study history. It's everywhere. More.
Jeez, I'm bowing. Once we've received that vow, do we need to concern ourselves if we are saving all beings?
It's always the intention. There's no proof. So you would start out by doing shikantaza, zazen, or simple. If you had to do some other kind of meditation, it was people who consider themselves students of mine. I can work with someone if they want to do something slightly different. But basically, it's about learning to receive whatever arises, whether it's coming through the kitchen door, it's coming in your mind stream, flying over the house, it's a noise down the street, or it is your own negativity that is triggered by someone out here doing something. All they have to just do this or do that, and suddenly negativity comes up. I'm sure you all have a little bit of an experience of that. That's called dependent origination, and there's no one there. If there is someone there, then we'll either push it down, or we'll support it by saying, well, if I wouldn't feel this way, it wasn't what she said, and look what they did. No wonder I'm feeling this way. So, Jim, why are you feeling that way? I can tell you why I'm feeling that way, Art. Any arts in here? I can tell you, how many times have you been in a conversation where you use the otherness to reify your thought patterns so you can continue to be somebody's going somewhere, having some kind of you aren't anybody and you aren't going anywhere. There is nowhere to go and there is no one. This is called transcendence. If you're interested, I'm pointing at it. And if you think, oh, he's so full of himself, I think I need someone more holy, more spiritual, more tamped down a little bit, or something more sweeter. Yeah. Well, I met one of those. And if you were around him and he had your permission, he turned from a feather into a sword. Go ahead.
Zambang, you came back to the idea of it's what the intention that's important. What form does our intention take in regards to saving all beings? Bang.
It probably is going to start out with just how ridiculous it feels to dedicate your life to others. To do a prostration and with the ideas, I'm going to save all beings. So, but to do that with the intention to just return. This is why we have in the tantric tradition and the Tibetan tradition, we have hundreds of thousands of prostrations, because you can't do it just with the mind or the body, speech, and mind. You might have to do it with just the body, or the body, the speech, and the mind that is addressed through visualization. You may need that kind of a form, but the way I see it, all the visualizations you need are right on that wall. You don't need to generate special ones, deity yoga. Unless you do. And if you do, then I'm all about that. Go ahead. Visualize white Tara, green Tara, Chenrezig, Mahakala, whatever. Do that. Do hundreds of thousands of them. Or just sit and face the wall. And then the practice is to devote yourself, dedicate yourself. We chant this sutra every morning, most mornings. So it's just an ancient way of reaffirming the Mahayana path. Yeah.
Zambang, is practicing forms the intention? Not like is our intention to practice forms, but are the practices themselves the intention? Bowing.
For a while. Yes. We need something to touch base with, or something to give us some, as we're slowly beginning to train the awareness to move slightly away or slightly in front of the thinking process. This is scary to ego, to actually start to lead with your awareness where you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Meeting with a teacher can be that way. Certainly was for me.
Thank you.
Further questions in here in the Zendo?
Shadow bowing. Is save all beings and train all beings, are those different intentions?
What is it you want to know? What brings up the question?
Shadow bowing. It just seems really important that the teacher sees what this is, and if not, this could easily become just regurgitating forms over the years. I'm wondering what that difference between the intention to save all beings and the intention to help someone train their mind, or if those are different things.
Saving all beings may show up lots of different ways, but a true teacher, I'm saying a teacher who teaches out of realization, not out of a bunch of shit they know, not memorizing something and spouting. Reciting some kind of relative understanding of it. They actually teach out of what this is. They're looking at it. They aren't separate from it. You're not separate from it. They know that, you don't. You might be trying to believe that, but it's not about belief. It's not about disbelief, and it's not about ignoring. It's you transcend this without without going anywhere. So if you find yourself training people, then it'll just happen situationally. You'll just find yourself in that position. It's like, how do you know you're a teacher? You got students. I think that's what was it? Suzuki Roshi, one of his students, way back in the 60s, said, was sitting there looking at him. I have to kind of paraphrase, looking at him and saying, so Roshi, again, guesswork here as to the memory area, Roshi. So what makes you and I different from each other? And he said, I have students and you don't. You have any students? Keep practicing. But if you do have students, that doesn't mean that you're an enlightened being, because you might be teaching out of knowledge, and some people will settle for just knowledge, especially if it's from someone who is extremely knowledgeable and erudite and has an intellect like a bear trap. You ever met anybody like that? Where are they at now? Oh, you have an intellect like a bear trap?
In the sense that it's painful.
Huh?
In the sense that it's painful.
Yeah, I watched it. I think you're pretty close to that, yeah. But you've met your demise here, as you probably know. Don't teach unless you have to. And if you have to, you won't be able to help it. You won't be able to, you won't be able to turn away from it. Save all beings. Junchu.
There's a question from Vishal in San Jose.
Go ahead.
He asks, you said you are also in this with us. How are you so sure that this is the way out? Bowing.
I'm not sure of anything, and there's no way out of anything. Nothing is trapped. Nothing is closed. Realization, liberation is already the case. Vishal, you're just covering it up, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be even listening, even considering this. If you were liberated, you wouldn't be here. But nothing is covered up. That's the realization, is there's nothing to correct, nothing to fix. His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, when he was dying, just before his parinirvana in 1981, said nothing happens. That's an ultimate teaching. Nothing occurs. This doesn't mean that things aren't coming and going and happening and showing up and turning blue for a while and then turning yellow again, or getting sharp around the edges and then being dulled, and then being sharp around the edges and then being dulled, sprouting legs, then sprouting wings, then sprouting those other things, sprouts. But nothing lasts. Things show up and they go away, show up and they go away. But that which, it's like the metaphor for that is your mind is like the sky, doesn't do anything. You might think it's a cloud. The clouds think. The clouds think. Kinda. That one cloud's certainly making a hell of a racket. It's the one in your mind. This is why it's so important to observe, so that you and receive, so that you eventually begin to see the substrate under the cover up, which is full, clouded, lumpy with suffering. And that's the suffering of everyone. It's not just your suffering. That's why the bodhisattva path is such a powerful path of liberation, of wisdom, of freedom, empty of any accomplishment, empty of anyone on the path. Vishal. Go ahead.
When you say don't teach, and I'm looking at the great precept of don't hoard teachings, what is it to hoard the teachings?
You're hoarding the teachings if you think you know what the teachings are, and you actually cover up the teachings with your interpretation of the teachings. So that's hoarding the teachings. The person's buying into what someone 3 years behind you and studying the Dharma is starting to believe the things you're saying about the Dharma and your understanding of the Dharma and your understanding of ethics and how teachers shouldn't do this and they better act this way. This is aggravating as hell. Go ahead.
What is understanding the Dharma that's not an understanding of the Dharma?
What?
like not my individual understanding of it? Or what is understanding the Dharma that's not my version of it?
What do you think it is? Ondo, answer his question. You're a monk. Answer his question. Answer it.
I don't know how to answer it.
Okay. That's a response. Do you have some kind of inkling of what it is without being able to answer it? A little bit? Just around the corner, that little dark area, you have some kind of idea, but you're not pulling that contraption called presumption and called projection or called elaboration out into the open and starting to spout out about it. Don't settle. If you know the truth, you'll never lie again. If you know the truth, you'll never make another decision because there is no one left. There's just this. This is why this tiny little sangha, everyone here is handpicked. I'm sure you all know it. People that are not ready for this kind of teaching will leave, and they'll listen for a few minutes and say, I don't want to hear that guy. The guy's so full of himself. That's deliberate. No, it's not deliberate. Nothing is deliberate. I don't deliberate on anything. Well, maybe that one time. But then I stopped because I saw that was not very enlightened. Go ahead.
Bowing. So when you say don't teach, is that not an invitation to go the other way with it and resist teaching?
No, not necessarily. Just don't do it unless, now if you're invited, if you're talking to someone and they're saying, so could you explain, do you understand I'm having trouble with the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, Swabhavikakaya? Can you understand? Can you explain that to me? How that works? What is that structure even about? And if you might be able to say, well, you remember what you read, but don't necessarily leave the basic explanation of that, which is what we discuss at the book studies. This is how we talk about them. If you'll notice, if someone in any one of these 12 book studies starts to elevate themselves as a teaching person, then if the facilitator, if she's doing her job, will stop that. Don't teach. Now, with that being said, if a teacher arises in that area, you won't be able to stop them. Go ahead. Junshu.
A question from Naveed in Iran. If the mind only receives, what produces?
Oh, the mind produces, but what I was saying, there's no individual who is actually generating anything. The individual, the apparent illusion of somebody aligns itself with different aspects of pratitya samutpada or dependent origination or the store consciousness and uses that to reinforce his, her, their identity. So that's just another aspect of consciousness, the seventh consciousness, as is talked about in the Yogacara tradition. So it doesn't belong, the whole production, receiving, coming and going, it's just totally dependently arisen, and it is an illusion. It's because it's not real. If it were real, it wouldn't disappear. But it shows up, is there for a while, 6 months, 8 years, 13 centuries, and then it comes apart. All compounded things will vanish. Who you are can't vanish because it has not appeared. Bodies appeared, which we identify with. Just love this situation, although it's suffering. So is there I saw another one in the chat box. Can somebody read those since I'm a little bit away from that?
Thanks for bowing. It's a question from Susan Hirschfield.
Susan.
What do you mean by this kind of teaching? What is this kind? Bowing.
Teaching out of what you're looking at. What I'm saying, I teach out of what I see. I don't think. I mean, there's some thinking going on, but there's the thinking that's going on is not a person coming up with stuff. Let's see. A little bit, I might say, like, Susan, you asked me in a text, you sent me a text and said, I think you said something like, what is saving all beings? What does save mean? I think you brought it down to that one word, as I recall. And so I do everything with people. I don't set myself up over here as some kind of I'm going to talk about this and then talk about that. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't do it. I have to do it with everyone. There'd be no monastery if there weren't for these people. So I do it like I'm doing it with you. We just met, a few weeks ago or something, and you have a lot of ideas about how to work with this organization. I'm really, I don't get excited much, do I? Somebody going to argue with me?
I was gonna say, yes, you do.
Huh? Yes, I do.
You
Okay.
dance every Friday.
Okay, I'm very excited about stuff. But the excitement is, let's see, how can I qualify that? Is self-existing. Rangjung excitement. So yes, I do, but meeting you, it just means that what I do, everything is mutual. We do it together. And how we're going to do that can be scary. So don't get too close. You might get burned. Get too far away, as I say, traditional way of saying too close to the teacher, you're going to get scorched. Get too far away from the teacher, you don't get enough heat. I experienced that completely with both of my teachers. I had other teachers, but the hot and cold part was just with Trungpa and Koban.
Isaac bowing. To speak out of awareness, is that to see the thought and create space around it and then speak on it?
Nope. Wrong.
What is it to speak out of awareness?
Oh, thank you. You're going to ask me. Good. Instead of tell me. Good. Okay, so quite often I say, let's not do or questions, because you do either or, then I have to pick one. So I don't want to do that. I say, what do you want to know? That way I want to know this. That way I can respond out of that based on what I'm looking at as you ask the question. Then that just arises. I don't really think about what to say. I don't analyze. I don't even know what I'm going to say. I listen to the answer at the same time you do. It's kind of if it weren't so ordinary, it'd be kind of astonishing, but it's just ordinary. So ask me a question. What do you want to know? It can be the same thing.
Bowing.
Go ahead, please.
When bringing questions to the teacher, you sometimes say, don't hesitate.
I do.
It seems like when I do hesitate and I create awareness around that question, it becomes more clear. Is there something to be benefited from not hesitating?
Yes, because you think you're clear about it and you're not. If you're clear about it, why ask a question? Or are you talking about the clarity about what you want to know? And if you're clear about that, then tell me what you want to know. Don't ask me a question. Say, I would like to know what your favorite color is, or something like that. And say it very directly. More? There's room in there. I'm saying I would go back in there. Now I've asked you if there's more. I'm going to go back and respond to something that I heard you say. I'm saying you don't create space around anything. So you're not in charge of anything. You say, kind of go back and create space around the question. Nope.
Isaac bowing, maybe
Yes,
instead of that, to see it with awareness and then say it, bowing.
Possibly.
Isaac bowing, what's showing up for me is when interacting with my friends.
You still have friends? That's all I took.
Barely.
Those, you can get rid of those guys.
A lot of times I see what I want to say and then I'm aware of it, and then it just feels kind of awkward or off timing to say it again.
Okay.
Is that speaking out of awareness if I were to act on that? Bowing?
So since I don't know the whole dynamic, I would just say less is better. Spend, as far as your friends or your cohorts or whatever, anybody that you're around, if they don't have any mind training at all, it's the conversations are all going to be very surfacey and about right and wrong, up and down, what I want, what I don't want, what I like, what I'm getting, what I'm not getting, who's right, who's wrong, who's ugly, who's beautiful, who's really nice and who's not so nice. It should be constant relative stuff going on, just kind of like gossiping. I'm not saying you're gossiping. I don't think, I don't sense that you do that at all. It might be a little difficult for you to even talk to your friends. But I would say just listen to them. Listen to what people are saying and actually listen. Actually hear what they're saying. Hear the texture of the words, the tone of the word if it drops or if it goes up. Notice the radical aspects, the radical minimal qualities of any kind of communication, whether it's handwriting, whether it's speaking, or whether it's a body change as someone's talking or making a point. And don't add on to your interpretation. We're not writing books about stuff. I'm going to write a book on what I know about body positions and how that works to the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, or something. Don't do that. Just notice, just the awareness of it is it. And it's not the conclusion about it, which is more about science and behavioral stuff, which we need. We need that. We need to work with this. We need therapists. We need psychiatrists. We need the potato farmers. I don't eat potatoes, but we need potato farmers because some people do. How many potato farmers are there in Michigan? Lots. Yeah, so somebody's eating them. So I'm saying it's very dependently arisen. Some things are coming and going and other things are coming and going. And you can just watch that. Be an observer. Just stay in the front row of the theater and watch your mind, watch all the aspects of the mind show up as a director, as the main character, as a character in the background, as a stage set. And what do they call that? Somebody sits back and gives you your lines. That's ego. There's a true actor on a stage or a true voice has no prompt. I think that's what it is, a prompter. They don't have any prompt. They don't need a prompt because they're no longer operating out of right and wrong, correct and incorrect. Might have to look at that for several decades.
Isaac Bowing.
Sure.
But I'm with them. It's very difficult not to partake at least a little bit in some jabs or something.
Yeah.
Is there some truth to me not overdoing the listening and kind of slipping some things in there?
Knowing you, I haven't known you very long, but the way I know you, I know, you're, as long as you continue, the most important thing for you to do is continue shikantaza. And it's up to you. I would feel stay in touch with me, but the very minimal, don't stop the mind training. You might need a different teacher. I don't know. I don't own anybody. So, but I would say, if you're asking me, you're giving me permission to continue to train your mind for the rest of your life until the mind training, the meditation, and your everyday life, the boundary between those collapses and everything is in samadhi. Everyone is in samadhi or not separate or meditative. Everyone is in meditation all the time. It's not a state of mind. It is mind. It just is the mind. And you're not threatened by anything. You're no longer confused by anything because you see confusion very, very clearly.
Isaac Bowing, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
What does it mean to save all beings when we're endeavoring to receive our difficulty and it's leaking out anyway?
Be aware that it's leaking out. It's the awareness of the leaks. It's the awareness of the outflows. Don't stop the outflows. Don't be a better person. But when I say, don't do this or don't do that, or just listen, or 90-10, listen 90% of the time and speak 10, I know you can't do that, but that sets up a form so you can, by having that form, you can see how that leak happens. You can actually witness the way in which it is triggered or the way in which it happens. Don't repair it. This is not plumbing. It's something that happens in a way that you can't address it with mundane, materialistic approaches, other than setting up the form so that you can see it. It's like we set up a form in a monastery, and then we come in and we watch what moves. We don't accept it, reject it, or look away. And eventually we transcend. Transcend is just a relative way of saying that you see that things and space are not two different things. It's an incredible example of perfect communication, cooperation, collaboration. Something arising in space. It's like the cloud cooperating with the sky. It's doing it all the time. Lightning and thunder is not wrong. It's dependently risen. Sunlit clouds are not wrong. Are they? I should name you Thunder and Lightning instead of Sunlit Cloud. I could change your name. What's your private name? Mirror Mountain? Yeah, well, that's good enough. We'll just leave it at that. I won't change your name to Mirror Mountain. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. What were you saying?
Jesus, but how do I not kill my thoughts when I'm killing my thoughts?
Just watch the murder. Just watch it. This is a first grave precept, not to kill. You can't help but kill. If you're going to eat for your body, if you're going to eat, you're going to have to kill something, and it's alive. I don't care if it's bananas or celery. It's going to die if you're going to live. But what happens is people start to idealize that and say, well, I don't kill anything. I don't eat anything that has eyes or anything that has a mommy. It's just horrible stupidity that does that. Isn't really responsible for the constant life and death process that's happening in the world. We actually take our heart out of it and seal it off over here with some stupid concept like, I don't eat anything that has eyes. And who's looking at you and who's listening to you? Celery, listening to you. And I'm not just kidding. As Suzuki Roshi once said, a long time ago, said, if somebody's watching you, you can hide from them. But if nobody's watching you, you can't hide from yourself. Similar situation. Just observe. There's no way to do it right. There's no way to do it wrong. But there's a way to not do it, and that's to not do it. So just keep going. It might not look like you're getting anywhere, and fundamentally you're not, because that's a materialistic approach to it. But just continue. This is why you need a teacher. It's why I needed a teacher. And I'm not here marketing myself as a teacher, though it may seem that way. I would say don't do anything unless you have to, including listen to me. Should I be meaner?
Bowing.
Should I be meaner to you, or what do you guys think? Am I mean enough to Juzan? Nobody's voting. Okay. Who is it that asked the question?
Bowing.
Go ahead, Sokuzan.
You spoke of repeating, we recite the vow over
Yes.
and over again until we become the vow. What does it mean to become the vow? Bowing.
You probably would stop chanting it. I mean, you may or may not. It won't make any difference. It'll be situational. If you're with people that are chanting, you'll chant with them. If you're not, you won't feel like you're missing something, or you should be doing something else. Someone who is clear, or shall we use the exact word? Someone who's awake is not concerned about. There's nothing, no one there. So therefore, everything that happens is perfect. Go read Longchenpa. You want a good dose of that kind of teaching. the Tibetan master, Longchenpa. Everything is perfect. This doesn't mean there aren't things that are off or that are killing people or horrible misunderstanding of everything, where there's intense suffering, human beings killing their own kind. So fear-based. We've got to kill the people who are against us in order to feel safe. Any further questions here?
Ian bowing.
Ian, go ahead.
What is it to get enough heat from the teacher?
What?
What is it to get enough heat from the teacher?
Probably means that your relationship to the teacher, whether you're a monk or whether you're a person off in the distance who has no formal ordination but listens to the teacher, considers that, and is fine with that. Excuse me. I have students that I've had countless numbers of interviews with. We've never even mentioned vows. They don't bring it up. I don't care what they do. So, and other people, the first thing I hear when I have an interview is, how do I become a monk? I want to become a monk. So usually that keeps going. A person doesn't say that one time and then, well, I don't think I want to become a monk. So it would be up to you to decide what that is. I had a great deal of trouble with that when I was much younger with Trungpa Rinpoche. Should I move to Boulder where he was? Shouldn't I? Well, what I did is I just kept my distance from him because it was too scorching to be close to him. But I practiced a lot. So I just did what he said, meditate. This is his main thing for me. When he would see how terrified I was, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. He would keep saying that. And he wouldn't tell me how, but he would say, well, keep sitting, keep sitting. Anytime I had an interview with him, it wasn't that many, but it was always trying to reassure me because he could see that I was out of my mind, and I knew it, and I didn't know what to do about it, and I needed his help. So as soon as I felt like I was going to get burned, I got out of there. So to respond a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more on that, Ian, I would say each person will be different. Each person will know. Sometimes, anytime I meet someone, I feel like I've known them forever. And even if they leave and go somewhere else, there's nothing to correct. If you come this way, if you don't care for this teaching, I say it over and over again. Go do something else. Don't waste your time or my time. Go do something else. Find a better teacher. Go study under a famous teacher like Sotrama Leon or the Dalai Lama, or well, Thich Nhat Hanh, he's gone, but he had thousands and thousands of students. And was he a good teacher? Probably. I don't know. So,
Ian bowing.
please.
What is the main thing I should be doing?
Train your mind. Find out who you are. Do some practice every day that will help you. It could be reading. It should be some awareness practice. At least some time each day to strengthen that area of the awareness instead of that area of the thought process that is tied up with the self-centeredness, the narcissism. So that's what you should do. Just set it up. If you need my help, you know how to find me. If you don't need my help, do whatever you want. Now, somebody who lives here and is a fully ordained monk, they need my interaction with them is much closer, and why is it that way? Because it's mutual. They know nobody's marketed anything to anybody, but they know that they need this, and I know that out of the vow that I received, and now I feel like I am. It's not some kind of a big bragging point. It's not even anything at all, just a way of talking about consciousness. Further, Ian?
Bowing. No, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. We'll take one final question and then we'll close. Anyone in here? Kelly, didn't you have one a while back? Forget what it was.
No,
Want to ask me?
Kelly Bowing. Was just wondering if you could say more about meet people where they're at with Save All Beings.
So, good one. So to meet people where they're at, Kelly wants to know, how does meet people where they're at, how does that tie in with Save All Beings? So you aren't going to be able to help somebody fundamentally unless you listen to them and see what is going on, not from the point of view of analyzing. And you being a therapist, you do a lot of listening. You can't do that unless you listen a lot. So I would say just receive what they're saying, listen. And if you can, don't abandon what they're saying for what you think they're saying. When somebody is talking to you, just hear the words, just hear the texture, hear the tone go up and down, watch their body movement. If it goes from this to this, watch right where they're saying a particular verb or noun or something like that. Watch if the body movement changes. Don't abandon what you're seeing for that must mean that they're this or they're that or they're. Don't do it. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the sound of the voice. And as a therapist, you're kind of put on the spot every time you do that. To actually be genuine, be there with them, with another human being in a room who's having difficulty. So it is your opportunity to help them by receiving. And sometimes all people want is for you to listen to them. One of the best things you can do is to receive. Really listen. You might never be able to reach into the person's mind stream. Even with the whole, what is it that your brain spotting is one of the names for it. That's a powerful thing that works with deeper levels of consciousness that just uses the eye movement to access that. So sometimes that's helpful. It brings someone into areas of consciousness, and all you've done is move a stick around or something. And then the other one that you do, I can't remember the name of it.
EMDR.
EMDR?
It's the
Similar?
person who developed brain spotting.
Yeah.
He was an EMDR therapist for most of his career.
I see.
So they're very similar.
So these people who are developing this are still in the mechanical aspect of consciousness. They're not working with deeper levels of consciousness that come out of intense awareness practice, or shikantaza, or shamatha vipassana even, or deity yoga and other forms. So it's just listening, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing, and any thoughts that arise that are triggered, you could say, by what someone is saying or doing, just observe those. They're just, lightning bolts or rainbows. It's just phenomena. And by watching phenomena without grasping, by watching phenomena, either from someone's voice or from your mind stream being triggered, the way of saying it, that by just observing that, one begins to see the fundamental spaciousness of everything, of your mind, of their mind. You fundamentally see you're not separate from them. You're just as crazy as they are, but you know it, and they don't. And therefore, they might as well be walking through a carnival and just not realizing that walk by a tilt-a-whirl is going to get a hold of them. Walk by a Ferris wheel is going to get a hold. They're susceptible to everything because they're so, the word I often use is porous. The consciousness is not understood, so therefore it's unprotected. So therefore it is vulnerable to everything. Addictions, abuse from others who get their safety by abusing others. That's how they protect themselves. They find people that are wrong or bad or they don't like, and they abuse them. I don't need to say any more about that. You already know. More?
Kelly Bowing, the more that I'm a student of yours, the more you're kind of there in those sessions. And sometimes I feel like they need to talk to you more than they need to talk to me. But in terms of meeting them where they're at, if there starts to be some curiosity about you and about this, I want to say, is it okay? But I do kind of pass that along a little bit, and then it's up to them to do what they do with it.
Very, very little, no promotion. I mean, if someone needs to do this, then, you know, I sometimes say, make them drag it out of you. Like if they say, well, what do? You seem to have it together or whatever. And you can immediately say, not really. Or whatever you would say. But you could say, well, I meditate. And then go on. But don't teach meditation to anyone unless there's some kind of, they want this. This is very hard to do. It's not just it's not as easy as some forms that are more like closing your eyes and going into a semi-sleep state, which is much more comfortable. The Vipassana is not wrong. It's easier to do. So I wouldn't promote anything. That being said, if at the Karma House, there might be a structure whereby once the structure is there as a form, that way they're not on their own. They can come in and come to a class, not on Buddhism, just on mind training, how to actually see what's happening in your mind stream, very simply. And they may need what we call the religious or spiritual orientation towards it, and they may not. So, simply put. More.
You're just right there.
Hmm?
You're just right there.
Who is?
You.
I'm where?
You're everywhere.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a cult. You don't want any cults. So, and so are you. You say you're everywhere, and so are you everywhere. It's just that we shrink down into this little paranoia, you know, about, you know, if you just get up and walk down the street, as soon as you walk down the street, you're everywhere until something happens that creates that area of the mind that shrinks up and it's like a tight fist in your heart. And you know, you can train your mind to not go to war with anything, especially your own emotions, conflicting emotions. I think it's almost supper time, isn't it? Okay, somewhere. Okay, we can dedicate the merit.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi fu shi son mu sa moko sa moko the 10 directions of 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, the great prajna paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.